Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnur Gurur Devo Maheshwarah Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Awesome. So we were supposed to start from this topic, the truth of Brahman. I'm hoping that's I'm correct. Can someone confirm, please? Okay, I will take that as yes. Who would like to get us started here? And we are about to complete Sloka 16 today. So we'll just do a quick debrief on what we learned, and then we'll move into Sloka 17 after we finish the rest of the topics.
I can read.
Go ahead, Anitaji.
The truth of Brahman. Tattva is often said to mean reality, but in fact it is the Swarupa of Brahman. The Brahman is unqualified existence, Satya, knowledge, Gnana, limitless, Ananta, pure, Suddha, timeless, Nitya, etc. Can be understood through the various implied meanings,
Lakshanas.
Lakshanas of each of these words. Brahman is the cause of the world, Jagat Karana, and at the same time is itself Satya, Gnana, and Ananta. This then is the Swarupa of Brahman and is called Tattva. Brahman is not only Satya but is the Karana for everything. Therefore, everything is Brahman. Brahman plus all names and forms is all that is here. Thus, those people who know the truth of Brahman, Tattva Darshana, understand both Sat and Asat. Both must be known. Sat is Sat and Asat is Asat. Asat depends upon the Sat, but Sat does not depend on Asat. Those who know the truth of everything, Tattva Darshana, are called Panditas, and the ones who, as we saw earlier, do not come to grief. Why? Because they know the truth. Now, why are you sad? Is it due to Asat or Sat? If you say you are sad because Asat is going, you must see that going is the nature of Asat and that it is not real. Therefore, you cannot cry for the Asat. When one's understanding of Satya is lacking, then Mithya becomes Satya, resulting in confusion. Without Satya, there is no Mithya. Tasya bhavana tattvam. The nature of a thing is called tattva. The confusion, Mithya must be understood as Mithya and Satya as Satya. Only then does everything fall into its own place. Satya does not elicit any sorrow, and Mithya does not have the status to cause sorrow. If there is sorrow, it is Mithya.
Can you finish the rest of this topic as well, Anitaji?
Sure. The confusion between Satya and Mithya. There is a well-known story that illustrates the confusion between Satya and Mithya. It is as follows. In the court of a particular king, there were two scholars. One was an Advaiti who said that Brahman was Satya and world, Jagat was Vidya, Mithya. He talked about this constantly. Vedanta being nothing but a discussion of Satya and Mithya, cause and effect, Karana Karya Vada.
Anitaji, I think we finished this
We
one.
did this story, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember.
exactly. That. Yes, we did this story. So let's go to the.
We have to start from can truth be defined?
I think we stopped after the story. I think the story is when we stopped after the story.
Yeah, we have to start from can truth be defined? Page
Okay,
92.
okay.
Can truth
Thank
be
you so
defined?
much. Yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
just do this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Can truth be defined? It is generally thought that truth cannot be defined, whereas we say that truth alone can be defined. Everything else can be only conditionally defined and so requires further definition. Therefore, any definition of an object which is a sat, mithya, is a point of view subject to further definition. Being neither Sat, existent, nor Tucha, totally non existent, how can Mithya be defined? There is no explicability for Mithya. That there is no explicability is its explanation. We are not just getting lost in Mithya, but then saying it is not explainable at all. It is inexplicable in the sense that it cannot categorically be defined as this is Satya, because our definition of Satya is that which is not negated at any time. Because what is never negated at any time is Satya, you cannot say that an object such as a pot is Satya because it did not always exist. Furthermore, it may be broken tomorrow. Nor is it always the same part. Since yesterday it was in one form and today it is another form. The part is also not tucha, totally non-existent, because if it were non-existent, it would not be perceived or known to hold any water. There is therefore such a thing as a part. Between Sat and tucha, therefore, there is a reality which is referred to as Asat. In fact, the technical word for Asat is generally Mithya. Although the word Asat, Mithya, and Maya are all used in the Shastra, the ontological definition for this order of reality is Mithya. What is not subject to negation in all three periods of time, past, present, and future, is Satya. And that which does not exist at all in all three periods of time is Tucha. Therefore, what is in between becomes Mithya or Asat. Further, Krishna said,
Okay. So here's where I think we are finishing Sloka 16. So we'll just do a quick recap and we'll go into Sloka 17. So three major points that we have learned in this. The Shloka itself says that there is no existence for the unreal and there is no non-existence for the real. The truth of both of these is indeed known by the seers of reality. So that's the definition or that's the meaning of the shloka itself. So out of which, there are 3 points that they're talking about, right? One is for something that is unreal, there is no existence. And for something that is real, there is never non-existence. And seers, Tattvadarshi Bihi, are the only ones that see this truth. So 3 points. So we were trying to define what is Sat and what is real and what is not the unreal. So we were defining that. In that context, we defined anything that does not exist in all periods of time, past, present, and future. If something is impermanent, then that is called unreal. And in that case, we have started defining what unreal means. We said, okay, this body doesn't exist, it is not permanent. Did not exist a few years ago and it won't exist a few years later. So this is unreal. The world around us is all unreal. The planets won't exist. So everything is modifying and transforming to something else, and they are all unreal. But what we notice in our regular, in a materialistic world, we do see all of these things. But what we are and so we are trying to understand, I do see this stuff, and why is this being called unreal? And then we started talking about understanding the original source of all of this. Why is this impermanent? Because it is transforming to something else, but there has to be something that is original, the source of the origin of everything. And also, when everything unmanifests itself, then all of these go and merge into that one thing. So we call that the real. So at that time, we have defined these as Asat and Sat. So that part was clear to us. And then we started kind of defining what that Sat means. Because we don't need a lot of definition to understand what the Jagat is or what the unreal is, because we understand, okay, what the world looks like. We don't really need a definition for it. So we are trying to understand the original cause for all of these things. In this context, we have seen an example of the pot and clay. There are so many different pots, all kinds and shapes, but the original cause is clay. In a material world, we are giving it a name and a form so we can differentiate between one pot and the other. But in essence, they are not different from each other. So that was not very difficult to understand either. Then we talked about the incidental nature and the intrinsic nature of objects. So we started to understand in order to get more comprehension on what this, and Vedanta calls this origin as Brahman. And Brahman doesn't have a gender. So when we give it a saguna form, then we actually give it either a male form or a female form, and we call it, the Bhagavan or Ishvara or Shakti. So we give various names to to the forms of Bhagavan. What we are going is beyond the forms into the Nirguna Rupam. And we said, in order for this Brahman to be existent all the time, and he is the reality, then we said it has to be the intrinsic nature of Brahman to be existent forever. And in that context, we started defining about what is intrinsic and what is incidental nature. The example we saw was fire. And if I want to boil some water, I would take a bowl and put some water in it. And then I will put some fire underneath, and then I will because of the heat generated by the fire, the vessel is hot, and now the water becomes hot because the vessel is hot. And if I want to boil a vegetable, then I would throw the vegetable into the water. And now because the water is hot, the vegetable is also hot. But if I remove the vegetable out, after a few minutes, it becomes cold and it is not hot anymore. Similarly, if I take water out from the vessel out, then it'll cool down as well. And if I remove the vessel off the fire, it'll cool down as well. But if I remove the fire from all of these things, it won't cool down because it is the intrinsic nature of fire to be hot. So we said this for Brahman to be permanent, that has to be the intrinsic nature, all the origin of everything. So we give that attribute of Satyam. Then we talked about this. Go ahead.
You said the last one, the analogy that we're talking about. We talked about finally after if we what is the intrinsic part in the analogy? I'm sorry, I didn't get that part. Fire.
The intrinsic is the very own nature of certain things, right? So Bhagavan's intrinsic nature is to be permanent, like to be forever, the permanency. So there is, he's been in the past and he will be in the future and he is in the present. There is no non-existence for Bhagavan or Brahman.
Okay. In the analogy, you talked about removing the pot and everything. Finally, you said something and then we moved to God. So.
Okay, so I said, if we removed the vessel or the dish out of the fire, that will also cool down after a certain time. But if we remove the fire from all of these things, like, if I remove the vessel, if I removed water and if I removed the vegetable, the fire won't cool down. The fire is going to it will continue to be hot because it is the intrinsic nature of the fire.
Okay, so all this that we talked about, sorry if I could pause you for a second.
Please, of course, yeah.
So, I'm confused now, which means all of the creation is in the sense, I don't know if I'm being rude in a question, but I really have a doubt in the sense that
please,
it was a creation by God. So is it that the entire, because even he has a certain life, isn't it, beyond which he's also going to go through, meaning going back to the original consciousness and things like that. So which means to say all of the creation is a set then? Meaning, is that how I'm supposed to read this as?
Correct. All of the existent manifested universe is asat. And because there is a satyam that is passing through all of these, the substratum, the foundation of this universe is satyam. That's why the existence feels like it is existing. Just like how water feels hot because of the existence of fire. If fire didn't exist, then the water would not be hot. And when we talk about, even he has a certain life period. I don't know if you're talking about Brahman. And here we are not talking about an avatara.
I was talking about Brahma as in the creator.
Okay. So the difference is there are two terms that get used. One is Brahma and one is Brahma. So there is a difference and there is a confusion there. Brahma is Chaturmukha Brahma, the creator that has four heads, with the four heads being the four Vedas. He is one of the Trinity. Brahman is what is the namam that you will see in Vedanta, the Upanishads. It is defining the Nirguna Brahman, the Satchidananda Brahman that is the original God's particle. Just assume that's the word that our scientists use. So that is the original God's particle that has generated that is the origin of all the existence. So it is not Brahma.
I understood. Yeah.
Okay. So even in Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, so we say Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma. So there is a Hrasvam there, and the original first line is a Dheergam. So there are two different aspects of Parabrahman.
And that was the Trinity, isn't it?
Yeah, the first one, the Guru Brahma would be the creator in the Trinity. Parabrahman is beyond all of these, the original consciousness, even like the Nirguna form of Bhagavan. Was that clear?
Thank you. Got that.
Okay. Awesome. So coming back to the intrinsic and the incidental natures. So what we are then saying is the body, because it exists, the consciousness exists in us, or the Sat exists in us, therefore we get a life, or we get to live a particular period. And then there is transformation. The matter and energy have to transform from one to the other. The consciousness does not. It is a substratum that exists, and it is not subject to any change. Because we get a body, and the body mind sense complex, they keep changing. So I was, we are babies, and then we turn into youth, and then we turn into old age, and then I'll be gone a few years later. So this transformation, this change happens only to matter and energy, and not to the Satchidananda Parabrahman. So that is an important aspect to understand. So in this context, if you go back and read the definition one more time, it'll make a lot more sense to you that there is no existence for the unreal, no existence in the past and no existence in the future. There is a limited existence that is happening today in whatever you are seeing around you. The second sentence is there is no non-existence for the real. The real is always existent throughout. Otherwise, there is no universe that could exist without him. And the seers of reality understand this truth and understand this difference between Satya and Mithya. That's the other important thing we need to understand. Mithya has been used to define Asat. Mithya means something that has dependent existence. If consciousness did not exist, if Satya did not exist, then there is no Mithya. And in this example, again, for pot and clay or bangle, the ornaments and jewelry and gold example, if gold did not exist, then the jewelry would not exist. The names and forms are because of the existence of the Satya. Any questions before we move to Shloka 17? Any other thoughts somebody wants to share? Okay, all's well. So we'll move to Shloka 17. So I had a request. So I'm going to mute everybody. I had a request that I chant the shloka, and one of you, whoever wants to read the next topic, could repeat after me. So everybody gets to repeat on mute, and then I'll hand over to whoever wants to read the topic, and they can continue from there. So we'll take that process moving forward. Who would like to read the next topic and would like to chant the shloka after me?
I will.
Could I please?
Somebody else, Pranati? You're 1 second late. So we will do the next topic with you, Pranati, if you don't mind. There was somebody else who said they wanted to read. I did not capture the name.
Anu, it's me.
Anuji.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll chant the shloka. Avinashi tu tadvidhi
Avinashi tu tadvidhi
yena sarvamidam tatam
yena sarvamidam tatam
vinashamavyayasyasya
vinashamavyayasya
na kaschit kartumarhati.
na kaschit kartumarhati.
Awesome. Over to you, Anuji.
Okay. Ida.
Oh, sorry. Apologize. I wanted to mute myself.
Okay. All right. Idam sarvam, this entire world, yena, by which, tatam, is pervaded, tat, that, tu, indeed, avinashi, indestructible, vidhi, no, asya, avyayasya, of that which does not change, vinasham, destruction, na kaschit, no one, kartum, to bring about, arhati, is able. Know that by which this entire world is pervaded to be indeed indestructible, no one can bring about the destruction of that which does not change. Here, Tat refers to Sat, for which there is no abhava and is understood by the Tattvadarshi, knower of the truth, as stated in the previous verse. Sat is not subject to destruction, it is avinashi. Moreover, everything that is here, the entire world, is pervaded by this indestructible Sat, Sat Atma. Being subject to destruction, the world is Asat, not Sat. In this verse, Sat and Mithya are made very clear. Sat is other than Asat, whereas Asat is not other than Sat. Sat Vastu is called Vishnu, a word that is being quietly introduced here by Bhashyakara Shankara. That which pervades everything, meaning the entire world, including space, is called Vishnu. This is Sat. Since there is no Asat without Sat, the bhava of the Asat is nothing but the bhava of the Sat. For example, because the existence of clay pot is inherent in the existence of the clay, the bhava belongs to the clay and not to the pot. And when we say the pot is, that is Sat. Therefore, wherever there is a Sat, there is Sat. How do we get to the Sat? We do not have to get rid of the Asat in order to get to the Sat, nor is the Asat sitting upon Sat covering it up, just as the pot doesn't cover the clay by sitting on it. We need not destroy the pot in order to know the clay. It is just a question of understanding. Another question then arises. When the entire world is pervaded by Sat Vastu, is the Sat Vastu destroyed when the world is destroyed? No. One is Sat, which is not subject to destruction, and the other is Asat. When the Asat is destroyed, the Sat is not destroyed. There is both difference and non-difference here. Non-difference in the sense that all there is bhava, Sat, and difference in the sense that while Asat depends upon Sat, Sat does not depend upon Asat. Therefore, we say that there is both non-difference and difference. Because there is no real difference, there is non-duality. The crux of the matter here is that B is A, whereas A is not B. Is it possible that Sat, like time, destroys itself by its own nature, creating itself and then going away? No, because it is avyaya, not subject to change. Can anything else other than itself destroy Sat? No. Sat pervades everything and there is nothing other than Sat. Since Sat Vastu is Ekam, Advitiyam, one without the second. There is no second thing that can destroy Sat. Any other is dependent upon this Sat Vastu and therefore has no independent bhava at all. How is it going to destroy the Sat? This would be like the pot destroying the clay. The pot cannot say to the clay, I'm bored with you. You're always hanging around me. You never give me any privacy. Wherever I go, you come too. I am going to get rid of you. The pot cannot get angry at the clay. It cannot get out of the clay or and destroy it. Such a possibility does not exist. Therefore, Krishna said here that the Vastu Sat Atma, which does not change at any time, cannot be destroyed by anyone or anything. There is no one to effect destruction and no one capable of destroying it. Asya avyayasya vinasham na kaschit kartumarhati. Should I continue?
Sure. We'll actually ask Pranati, do you want to continue from here?
Thank you, Shriji.
Thank you, Anuji.
Wait, where are we? Regardless?
Yeah.
Regardless of the number of people or objects, Atma is always non-dual. No number or condition, activity or connection to activity brings about a change in the Atma. In fact, there is no connection, sambandha, for the Atma, just as there is no connection between the clay and the pot, because all that is there is clay. If there were a pot other than clay, then the clay could establish a relationship with it. But when a pot is clay, there can be no relationship between them. This, therefore, is the nature of Atma. At the end of his commentary on this verse, Shankara says that no one can destroy this Atma, not even Ishvara, the Lord. But shouldn't God be able to destroy anything? Shankara is not trying to belittle God. He was merely pointing out that the Ishvara cannot destroy the Satchitananda Atma, not because he is not almighty, but because Ishvara is Atma. Atma is Brahman and Ishvara is Brahman. Therefore, Atma and Ishvara are the same Brahman. The destroyer, Ishvara, is Atma. What is to be destroyed is also Atma. How then can there be destruction when there is no distinction between the agent and object of destruction? A subject-object relationship, karma sambandha, is not possible between Ishvara and Atma. But is there not a relationship between the devotee and Ishvara? Yes, if the word devotee means an individual. Atma identified with a given body, mind, sense complex. Ishvara can destroy or help a devotee, elevate or give punishment, but Ishvara cannot destroy the Satatma because both are identical. They have no subject-object relationship. Perhaps it might be argued that one part of the subject can destroy the other part, just as we can take a knife in our hand and destroy ourselves. If one hand can amputate the other hand, why cannot one part of the subject, Atma, destroy the other part? Cannot Atma also commit suicide in this way? Such destruction could only happen if Atma had parts, which it does not have. It is avyaya, indeclinable, indestructible. Further,
Sorry, we'll stop here for a moment and we'll just focus on two important pieces to understand. So I'll just go back for a moment and we'll focus on this particular part of the topic where it says, Pranati, do you want to read this one more time so we can just discuss?
wait, which one?
In this verse.
In this verse, Sat and Mithya are made very clear. Sat is other than Asat, whereas Asat is not other than Sat. Sat Vastu is called Vishnu. Vishnu, a word which is being quietly introduced here by Bhashyakara, Shankara. That which pervades everything, meaning the entire world, including space, is called Vishnu. This is Sat. Since there is no Asat without Sat, the bhava of the Asat is nothing but the bhava of the Sat. For example, because the existence of a clay pot is inherent in the existence of the clay, the bhava belongs to the clay and not to the pot. And when we say the pot is, that is Sat. Therefore, wherever there is asat, there is sat.
Okay, we'll pause there. So this is, I think, a very important part, and there is one more paragraph that we'll probably do just a little bit of reflection on. So, and in Vishnu Sahasranamam, we actually read the meaning of Vishnu. Vishnu is Vishwam eti vyapnoti iti Vishnu, who is the vyutpatti we have, the definition. Somebody who pervades everything, including the space around us in all the panchabhutas, in this body mind sense complex that we call I. It is pervading everything. Then if in the previous sloka we have agreed that for the real there is bhava or existence, for the unreal there is no existence, right? Now what they're saying then, if Sat exists, the existence is because of Sat, not because of this body mind sense complex or anything around us that is matter and energy. And how the example that helps us understand this, there is no difference, real difference between pot and clay. There are no two different things, and the pot cannot say, okay, clay, you're hanging around me, leave. Similarly, the Sat living within us, and we will get to, when we say living within us, that line itself, that sentence itself will change in a few slokas. For now, we will use that sentence. So we will say the Sat living within us is what causes us to exist or have this limited existence. Otherwise, there is no existence for the body, mind, and sense complex. And even this is a limited existence because it is being pervaded by the Sat. And we have seen a different example in the past that may make it easy for us. That at that time, probably Shankaracharya would not have had that example. When we talk about electricity, which surrounds all around us, it's only when it passes through a bulb or any gadget, any electronics gadget, it will make them alive, or it will enliven them. Similarly, the matter and energy can exist, but without this electricity passing through that gadget, it is not possible to enliven it or make it to work. So that's a very important concept for us to understand, that these two are cannot be separated from each other. They coexist, but at the same time, they're not exactly the same. They're two parts of a whole. Or maybe I should not even say that. Sorry, I'll take that sentence back. The asat would not have existed without sat, but the sat will always exist whether there is asat or not. So whether I am in this body or not, the Paramatman in me will always exist. My body can disappear and I may be reborn as somebody else, but the Paramatman has existed throughout my past births or my future births or this birth. It doesn't really matter because the Sat is always existent. So important concept there. And the next one, I wanted just to focus on this, is always a non-dual. And this is where, a lot of confusion arises. So we will spend, Anuji, do you want to read this particular paragraph here, please?
Another question then arises: when the entire world is pervaded by Sat Vastu, is the Sat Vastu destroyed when the world is destroyed? No. One is Sat, which is not subject to destruction, and the other is Asat. When the Asat is destroyed, the Sat is not destroyed. There is both difference and non-difference here. Non-difference in the sense that all there is, bhava, Sat, and difference in the sense that while Asat depends upon Sat, Sat does not depend upon Asat. Therefore, we say that there is both non-difference and difference. Because there is no real difference, there is non-duality. The crux of the matter here is that B is A, whereas A is not B.
Exactly. So we'll pause there for a minute. So ultimately, we are saying the Asat exists because of Sat, but Sat's existence is not dependent on existence of Asat. So that's been clear to us. Anuji, there is one paragraph. It starts with regardless. I don't know if it's exactly the same in the app that you're looking at. I'm sharing it on the screen.
Right. That is where Pranati started. Regardless of the number of people or objects, Atma is always non-dual. No number or condition, activity or connection to activity brings about a change in the Atma. In fact, there is no sambandha, connection for Atma, just as there is no connection between clay and pot because all that is there is clay. If there were a pot other than clay, then the clay could establish a relationship with it. But when a pot is clay, there can be no relationship between them. This, therefore, is the nature of Atma.
Fantastic. So 2 points here. One is they're saying all that exists is that Sat, and there is no separate existence for Asat. So it is not a one-to-one or one-to-many kind of relationship. All that exists or that can ever exist is all but that Sat, but taking names and forms. And the example is again clay and pot. The same clay that exists can convert itself into different kind of pots. And if one pot breaks, it could be manufactured, like it would modified into a different pot. And the Atman then is indestructible, unchangeable. It does not transform from one to the other. Then when we talk about transmigration and multiple atmas and everybody has a different soul and whatnot, that is only in the context of, and that's where here Swamiji is trying to explain that if you see it as, is there a relationship between a devotee and an Ishvara? Yes, if I see myself or the Atman as somebody bound by this body, mind, sense complex, yes, there is a Jivatman and a Paramatman. But the essence of all of this is again that whether it is my body, mind, sense, or complex, or the Atman that is living within me, is non-different from that original Brahman, then there is no difference, or therefore, the all that exists is nothing but Parabrahman. Therefore, everything around me, including myself, everything is none but Him. So there is no me in this, which is separate from Him. And the easier example for to understand this is the wave and the ocean example. We see multiple waves in the ocean. So I can say there is a bubble, there is a drop, there is a wave, there is the ocean. But in common language, I can say all of this is nothing but H2O. If I gave it a formula, if I called it water, then all that exists is water. It's all mnemonics, nothing more than that, and anything that the philosophers can do scholarly debates on. Ultimately, the essence is whether if I am seeing, if I am doing a puja, a kaika karma, I'm doing a homam or I'm doing a puja, then I have this difference between, okay, I am doing the puja, there is the havis and there is the homam, and there is the agni, and there is Bhagavan that will be the receiver of this. But if I'm trying to understand my existence, then my existence cannot be without that Parabrahman. I cannot be separate from him. Therefore, all that exists is Parabrahman. So it is, there is a beautiful shloka that is uttered by Hanuman when Bhagavan asks him the relationship that he has with him. So I'll just take a moment to bring up that shloka. I might have shared it in the group before. Yeah. So the shloka is, and I'll just hit forward on this to the group so you can all have it. Gita, but I will also chant it. Okay. The following shloka, as recited by Hanuman to Lord Rama, helps us understand that our conception of reality is inherently aligned with what we perceive ourselves to be. It's how I perceive myself in connection with Bhagavan that will make a difference in whether I think of the 3 different options or 10 different options in philosophy. But it is not inherent in how he sees us. So it says it perfectly synthesizes the Dvaitam, dualism, I and God are separate. Visishtadvaitam, qualified monism, I am a tiny part of God. And Advaitam, monism, I am God. They have buddhya tvad dasoham is what Hanuman says. When I identify myself with my body, I am your dasa. Jiva buddhya twadamshakaha. As an individual soul, I am but a piece of you. Atma buddhya tvamevaham. As the Atma, I am one with you. Iti me nishchita matihi. And in this, I have no doubt. So what this is saying then is when we talk about Aham Brahmasmi, we are not saying I am God. We are saying I am nothing but Him. If He did not exist, I would not have existed. My existence is completely 100% dependent on His existence, and I am nothing but Him. I am nothing but water, or a wave saying I am nothing but the ocean itself. I'm just, or if the wave says like I'm nothing but a part of the ocean. But if the wave says I am H2O and the ocean also says I'm H2O, then there is no essential difference between what these are made up of. So it is the scholars, we can leave the debates to the scholars, but it is the understanding of who I really am. And when I live in this body, mind, sense complex, what is that characteristic that I have to display to be in alignment, in sync with the rest of the universe? And as we go into chapter 3, we will be talking about karma yoga, and that is more important for us, from a lifestyle standpoint, more practical approach to, okay, now that I understand who I really am or what my relationship with Bhagavan is, then it gives us next steps on action items on what should be done in order to maintain that synchronization. So just wanted to focus on those two pieces. If there was any confusion in that part of Atma is always non-dual, there is only one Atman, Atman alone, Ekameva Dvitiyam. Any thoughts, questions before we move to Shloka 18?
Sri Devi ji, Padma here. So the dualism, can you please repeat that context once again?
So if when I identify myself as the body, with my body, then I am different and Bhagavan is different. In the Saguna Rupam, we can approach Bhagavan as I am your dasa, and in it is how we see again, just take the example of the water. I can say I'm a drop in the ocean. And if I live outside of the ocean, or maybe just take the example of a pond will say I'm a pond, I am not the ocean. But I'm so small and the ocean is huge, I look up to or I pray to the ocean. And then think about how a wave would feel. I am a part of the ocean. Is that I'm him, but I am part of him. And then we would just think of all of these as H2O. Then there is no difference between the real essence, the underlying substratum of any of these. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. So what we are trying to do then is understanding our real nature from an Advaita standpoint and try to live a Visishta Advaiti Bhavana in a Dvaita world. I don't know if that statement was extremely confusing, but that's essentially what we need to do. So understand who we really are, but I cannot say, oh, because Vedas told me aham brahmasmi, I cannot say, okay, I'm Brahman and living in this body, mind and soul, and then thinking like, I'm very egoistic. I'm going to not leave any of my anger and all of that, and I will call myself Brahman. That is not the essence of Advaita. Advaita says, understand who you really are. And then know that you are a small part of, because you're bound, this Atman is bound by this body, matter, and sense complex. You're bound in this energy matter complex. And work or live in synchronization with the rest of the universe and understand that all of these tiny pieces make up Bhagavan. But you're living in a dualistic universe where there is me, there is Jagat, and there is Bhagavan. Use the intellect to shift the focus on seeing myself as completely separate and completely like thinking somebody else is causing me sorrow, or like, all, and the whole essence of just discussion is like, something impermanent is causing me sorrow. And I'm very sad, I'm angry, and all of those things. So shift your focus away from it and know that all that is around you is nothing but Bhagavan. Okay, we will see more shlokas, so I won't pause here and confuse everybody more. So we'll go to shloka 18 without further ado. Who would like to chant the shloka with me?
I can do it, Vijay.
Awesome, Krantiji. Antavanta ime dehaha
अन्तवन्त इमे देहाः
नित्यस्योक्ता शरीरिणः
नित्यस्योक्ता शरीरिणः
अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य
अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य
तस्माद्युध्यस्व भारत.
तस्मात् युध्यस्व भारत.
Awesome. Over to you.
Okay. One second, Sriji. My screen has become smaller for some. Okay. Anasinaha, of the indestructible. Aprameyasya, of that which is not available as an object of knowledge. Nityasya, of that which is not subject. Subject to change. Eternal. Sharirinaha, Sharirinaha, of the embodied one, the self. Ime, these, dehaha, bodies, antavantaha, subject to end, uktah, are said, tasmat, therefore, Bharata, O descendant of Bharata, Arjuna, yudhyasva, fight. These bodies of the embodied one, the self, which is not subject to change, which is indestructible, and which is not available as an object of knowledge, are said to be subject to end. Therefore, O descendant of Bharata, fight. Krishna unfolded the Satvastu, showing that no one can destroy this Atma, including Ishvara, because it is indestructible and itself sustains everything. Now, what about the Asat? If Sat is indestructible and pervades everything, and if everything depends upon the Sat, does that which depends upon the Sat not become as true as the Sat? It is not said that you acquire the same qualities as the company you keep. It is not also true that if you string roses and then remove all, the string will continue to smell like roses because of its previous association with them. Similarly, here, since the Asat is always with Sat, is there not some kind of attribute transference because of this association? And then will not this Asat gain the same attribute of being indestructible? No, because there is no association. The string is different from the rose, but both enjoy the same empirical reality. What we call string has a certain empirical reality, as does the rose. Both of them enjoy the same degree of reality, and therefore one can lend its attributes to the other before association is possible between objects belonging to the same order of reality. The physical body is mithya. When you say this is the body,
Auntie, there is one more paragraph here.
oh, sorry, Sriji. Oh. Between the Sat and the Asat, however, such an association is not possible, just as it is not possible between the pot and clay. There is only one thing here, clay, which is Sat. Therefore, the Asat cannot gain indestructibility by association with the Sat. Physical body is mithya. When you say this is the body, what is it exactly? Is it the skeletal structure, the skin, the flesh, the marrow, the blood, a given cell, or the DNA? There is no one thing that we call body. All of this put together is the body. You can look at it in many different ways. You can look at it biologically or simply from the standpoint of being nothing but minerals, calcium, phosphorus, and so on, because each component depends upon so many other things. The physical body is mithya. Or if you take the body as whole, it depends upon the 5 elements according to the model in Vedanta. However you look at it, the body is mithya. Do you want me to continue, Sriji?
Yes, please. The next 3 paragraphs, and we'll pause there for a minute.
Okay, sounds good. The physical body is a product created at a given time and is subject to modification. Because it has been created, it has an end. Antavat, Krishna pointing out all the bodies standing before them, including his own, described them as Antavantaha. To whom do these bodies belong? The body, Sharira, is given existence and consciousness by Atma alone. Sat Vastu lends its existence equally to the physical body, Stula Sharira, and to the subtle body, Sukshma Sharira. Because the subtle body can reflect consciousness, the body is conscious. Therefore, the Sharira belongs to and has its being in Atma, which is the indwelled of the body. 2 words were used with reference to the physical body in this verse. Deha, ime dehaha, which is plural, and Shariri, nityasya sharirinaha, which is singular. Nitya means eternal, that which is not subject to change. The one who indwells this body as Atma, the meaning of the word I. Because there is only one Atma, the singular Sariri is used, whereas with the reference to all these bodies that undergo change and come to an end, the plural Dehaha is used.
Awesome. We'll just take a quick moment here. So 2 important things to remember. One is an example that our mama has given us. Put a flower beside a crystal, and the crystal will take the color of the flower. So if there is a red rose beside, say, let's just assume a crystal Shivalinga or any Vigraham, then the Shivalinga would appear as if it is red, because of the association or because of the close proximity of the two. But it is not true that when you separate them, the crystal will remain a crystal. It is not going to be red in color. So that's what they're trying to explain, that Satvastu, the Nityatvam, by being in close proximity to the body, mind, sense complex, there is no transference of attributes between the Sat and Asat. The Asat will not continue to exist without Sat just because it has been there with it for some time. And the same electricity example, if you pass the electricity through the TV, television for some period of time, if you turn it off, doesn't mean because it had some electricity in the past, it'll continue to go on for some time. Yes, of course, there is inertia in the kind of a fan kind of example. But essentially, there is no electricity or the transference of the attributes between Sat and Asat. That is one important thing. And in this shloka, it's important to observe what Swamiji is trying to say here, that Bhagavan used dehaha in plural and sharirinaha in singular. The one who is living within the Atma, he uses a singular, but he uses plural term for how many bodies. What it actually says is the Atman that lives within each of the bodies, or each of us, is not different. So because it is embodied in me, I can call it my soul, but essentially there is no difference between my soul and your soul, because a soul cannot be different. So important observations here. And we have 3 minutes left. If we want to discuss anything, or if we want to do the next topic, I'm open to suggestions on what you want to do in the next 3 minutes.
So, I mean, what you explained till now all made sense, but looking back in the paragraph that it said, with the rose and the thread and the beads and transferring the essence to each other, that's a little bit confusing.
So let's go back to that. So what happens in these, and in Shankara Bhashyam, in most of his bhashyas, he takes it as if this is the objection that is given by the other philosophers. In those days, there were other philosophers like the Sankhyas and especially Charvakas. Charvakas are, this life has been given to us, let's go enjoy, drink, enjoy, party. And because it's a very short-lived life, all of this philosophy that you're talking about, and restricting, regulating mind and senses, all of that is nonsense. That's the Charvaka philosophy. So these are some objections that we are reading. So if you notice, is it not true that you acquire the same qualities as the company you keep? Is it not also true that the string of roses, when you remove the roses, and the string will maintain that smell? Similarly, since Asat is always with Sat, is there not some kind of attribute transference because of this association? Then will not Asat gain the same attribute of being indestructible? The answer to that is no, because there is no association. They're only in close proximity to each other. So sometimes that can, because you're reading only this, it might sound confusing, but note that this is an objection that's being raised by other philosophers. And if they said that, then the answer would be no, that's not how it works. Because there is no association, there is no attribute transference. Does that make sense?
Sriji, can we say like at least the asat, whatever is asat, can affect each other, can have effect on each other, but it at any point it won't affect sat at all.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
And other than enlivening a body, even Sat does not have an impact or effect on Asat.
Yes, Sriji.
Says Sat don't have any impact of an Asat?
Correct.
Okay.
Other than enlivening the body, other than that awareness that we have, it doesn't influence us to do actions. And that's where the whole concept of the law of karma and free will and the power of free will and all of that, amazing conversations will come into picture. So we will be discussing those as we go into the next few slokas.
But one thing I wanted to ask, we say some people are enlightened, who are, let's say one big rishi. So is he making more contact with his sat, with his asat body?
Or associates more with his sat body, or sat, actually. Sat, I shouldn't say sat body.
Yeah. Sat,
Correct.
so
Correct.
so asat also can make connection to the Sat in you?
So it is more about the vision of whether you see yourself as the pot or the clay. That makes the difference. And the more the mind and body through karma yoga, we purify our mind. And that's the whole point of karma yoga, right? And
Yes.
not having, we're not doing work to gain a result. We are just doing it because it is our dharma. And then we just, we are supposed to be doing certain things and just do it. Don't expect a return out of it. So when we do that, because of the purification of the mind, if you remember, we talked about this example. There is a lamp, there is a deepam, and on it we have inverted a pot that has multiple holes. One hole is covered with a red glass, and the other hole is covered with a blue glass, and the other one is with covered in a glass covered in soot, and the other one is transparent glass. The same deepam, the same Atman, lights when you see from the blue glass looks blue, and when you see from the red glass looks red. When you see it from the one that is covered in soot, you can't even see the deepam clearly. And the one when you see it through the transparent glass, you see it as if it is the deepam itself. That's what yogis and rishis do, is to remove all what we call as categorization, that colorization of who we are, and that the ego and everything that actually makes us into who we are, like we give ourselves a color. They try to be so pure that they are devoid of all of their colorings. Your Patanjali in Yoga Sutras call it like colorings. So being devoid of those colors and being so transparent that you actually can see that or feel that consciousness through them. They're very close to being an Atman, still living in this body.
Yeah, that makes it clear. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So we'll conclude here.
Sri Devi ji?
Go ahead, Padmaji.
No, quick. So in a sense, Bhagavan is telling why you're feeling sad, because all is a Sat. You are not killing the Asat. There is no death to the Sat. So pick up and fight. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
You're being given a scenario. You're supposed to be doing some duties while you are here and certain activities.
Yeah.
Whether you do it or not, it will still happen. And whether it happens through your hands or it happens after a couple of years, just somebody else killing this person is going to die. So you can't run away from dharma because you think this person has to stay here forever, and you want to be associated with this body forever. So don't think or categorize activities as I want to do this, I like to do this, or I don't like to do this. I like this person, therefore I'll be biased to this person, but I don't like this person. And we talked about that during Gita, the context of Gita, right? Like if Bhagavan did not put the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona, instead he put him in front of Duryodhana and Dushasana or Karna, the reaction would be extremely different, isn't it? So Bhagavan is saying you are being biased. You're not following dharma. This is your activity. But while they are standing there and they have the similar kind of feelings towards you, but they are more elevated and say, okay, this is my dharma. I owe my diligence, or what is that word, to the throne. Therefore, I'm going to follow what's my dharma, even if I know that they have been wrong. That is Bhishma's rationale on why he was on the other side. So essentially, Bhagavan is saying, if it is impermanent, just don't try to get your joys and sorrows from the impermanent. Try to do the right thing and do it without seeking results.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll conclude here with a short prayer. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Sarvam Srimannarayana Charanaravindarpanamastu. Thank you so much for your time. We'll catch
Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Sriji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
धन्यवादः
Sriji.
भगिनी, धन्यवादः.
Dhanyawadaha.
Thank
धन्यवादः
you.
Thank you.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದ